You're listening to the weekly Parsha podcast, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in 5775, 2014. This week's Parsha is Parsha's Vayishlach, and we find in this week's Parsha the face-off between Yaakov Avinu, between Jacob and his brother Esav, Esau. Esav was coming out with 400 people in order to attack Yaakov, to attack Jacob, and Yaakov Avinu responds with a number of different tactics. And from these tactics, there's much to learn. I'd like to share with you a beautiful piece, two pieces from R Nosson, where he uses the ideas that we see from Yaakov Avinu in order to teach us a very powerful lesson. One of the things that Yaakov Avinu did was that he sent this doron, he sent this gift to Esav. And here, I'll read you the pasuk inside. The verse says in chapter 32, verse 15. Izim, Masayim, Usiyashim, Esrim, Rachelim, Masayim, Ve'elim, Esrim, a number of different types of animals that were sent, goats and sheep, etc. Gemalim and Nikos, V'neim Shloshim, Paris, Arbaim, Upar, Masar, Asonis, all these different animals. Vayitem Yaravadav, Eder Levadoi, he gives it over to the hands of his servants. Each one gets his own group of animals. Vayemar Lavadav, Ivr Lefonai, V'revach Tasimu, Bein Eder Le'eder. What you should do is you should go in front of me, you should pass before me, and there should be space between the different groups of animals. So each group had its slave or its person who was connected to it, and Yaakov Avinu was sending it in such a way there was space between them, and this way it would seem like an even larger gift. Now, R Nosson speaks and tells us what is the teaching here of this space between. What does that teach us? So I'd like to read it for you inside. Lif'amim, sometimes, says R Nosson, is balbel dasa adam b'shas yisurim v'tzar. Sometimes a person goes through difficulties, goes through pain, so his mind becomes confused. Rachman l'tzlan, heaven forbid. V'nidma like ki'ilu kol ha'olam nafal alav. And it seems to him as if the whole world has fallen upon him. Ukil chas v'shom kol ha'tzaris niskavtzu uvolav yachad chas v'shom. And it seems to him as if all of the difficulties and the challenges have gathered and come upon him at once. Heaven forbid. Without any space. And as a result of this type of thinking, so his heart becomes bent away, pushed away from Hashem. And he'll find it difficult to properly daven, to pray, to call out to God and ask for help. And the result of this can be that indeed, heaven forbid, the difficulties can get worse. And you can call it nimshach achar tsarai, because the more that a person is drawn after his pain, tsar nimshach acharav. So then that pain is drawn after him. Meaning, it's a cycle. The person allows it to get to him, so then it gets worse. Therefore, it's so important for a person to give himself space. To find the place of breadth, of largeness, within the difficulty, within the constriction, to find the expansion. And to give thanks to God for the good that He has at all times, even when it's challenging. Every single constricted place also has an expanded place. Every difficulty also has something where Hashem shows kindness. Bechinas, in the aspect of the verse which says, "Batzar hechavtali kanal," that in the constriction you made an expansion. It's a verse in Tehillim. David HaMelech, King David says this. This is the concept of that which we just read in the verse, which says that there was necessary for Yaakov to place a space between these groups of animals. And never be Yaakov Avinu, that it says by Jacob. That our sages say that this entire story of Yaakov, of Jacob, it's all a hint, an analogy, besides for the simple pshat, the simple understanding of the verse, but it's also all an analogy for the Jewish people, for the Golus, al hatzaris v'golios, the challenges, the exiles. Shekiven Yaakov litain revach ben hatzaris v'golios. By placing a space between the animals, between these groups of animals, so Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, was coming to hint to the fact that it was necessary and important and that there would be, he was setting a precedent, so to speak, that there would be space between the challenges and the exiles. Now what happens is, through this, by giving oneself space, by looking for the good within the challenge, and every person experiences challenges, but every person is also able to find within the challenge that Hashem's hand is there within that. So when it comes to this idea, when we do this thing, so it serves to cause the klipa, the forces of evil, which are called shor v'chamor, which are the klipa of shor v'chamor, shemechinas klipas Esav Yishmael, which are a reference to the aspect of the negative forces of Esau and Ishmael, to be subdued. Shehem klal kol hatzaros v'agoliyos, they represent in a general way all of the constrictions, all of the challenges, all of the exiles. And they want to cause a person's heart to become twisted at a time of constriction, at a time of challenge, as if there's no hope. Heaven forbid. That this is an even greater constriction, an even greater challenge, an even greater difficulty, more than the difficulty itself, is the statement of the Yetzer Hara, the statement of the forces of evil, that there's no hope. This is the aspect of what it says in the verse. Also, it's this continuation of the verse which we quoted earlier from David HaMelech, from Tehillim, from Psalms, that there's this death, there's this killing within a person. I'm getting constantly these negative statements are going on inside of my head, where these forces of evil are saying all day long, "Where is your God?" And the verse says, every single day my embarrassment is in front of me, etc. But Jacob, he started off this rectification by placing the space between these encampments, these groups of animals, such that even at a time of challenge, of difficulty, heaven forbid, that there would be a chance for a person to step back and to be able to look at the expansion and the space that's between the challenges that Hashem has done before this difficulty, before this challenge. And even in the challenge itself, Hashem is helping that person. So there's the past and there's the present, even within this difficulty itself. But al yidei zeh, and through this, yuchal litzchak l'Hashem yisborach. By doing this, by recognizing the good that he has experienced in the past, by recognizing the good that exists even within the challenging situation that he faces, so then he will enable himself to be able to call out to Hashem, indeed, to be able to daven, to pray. And the result will be, by using this focus, focusing in on the good, focusing in on the expansion even within the constriction, by doing so then indeed it brings that expansion more into his life, to the point where the challenge will completely disappear. So that's the first idea, is this revach, this space between the Adoram. Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, is facing off with Esav. He's facing this great challenge, and nevertheless, he gives himself space. He finds the revach, he finds the space, he finds the archava, he finds the expansion within the constriction. Now that's one point. Now a second point is that the verse says, and it's in chapter 32, verses 23 and 24, it says, Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, gets up in the middle of the night. He takes his wives, his acharas or yiladav, he takes his 11 children. He goes over, he passes over this passageway at Yabok. He goes over the river. And he takes them, he brings them over the river, and he carries all of his stuff from one side of the river to the other. Now what's the idea of this passing over the river? So R Nosson points out that Rashi says something interesting. Upirish Rashi, Asa atzma ki gesher. That Yaakov Avinu, that Jacob made himself like a bridge. It says R Nosson, ki ikar ha-gesher. What is the main aspect of a bridge? Lavar alav bezeh ha'olam, to pass over in this world. Hu emes. What is the gesher? What is the bridge in this world? It's the aspect of truth. As we find that Reb Nachman says, that a person needs, in order to get through this world, he has to pass through a very narrow bridge. The main thing is that a person not be afraid at all. In order to merit being able to pass over the bridge of this world, it's through the concept of truth. Like people say, that if a person has truth, a person is honest, so he can pass through this entire world. Because the main thing is truth. Because the signature of God, as it were, is emes, is truth. And God sealed heaven and earth with the aspect of truth. In the beginning, God created. So those three words, Bereshis bara Elokim, if you look at the last letters of each of these three words, it's the letters Aleph, Mem, Taf, which are emes, truth. So it represents the fact that Hashem's chaysim, his signature, is the aspect of truth. This is the foundation of the entire world. In all the confusions and all those things that prevent a person from serving Hashem, which the main aspect, the main thing that a person finds as a challenge to his ability to serve Hashem is being overly intellectual. The main way of overcoming that is through the concept of truth. That the concept of truth gives a person the proper direction to be able to pass through everything. Like the verse says in Psalms in chapter 43, that David HaMelech, King David, asks of God, send your light and your truth and they will guide me. Like the verse says, it's also in Tehillim in Psalms chapter 86, I will go in your truth. Because truth is the bridge of holiness. In the aspect of that which it says about Jacob, it's the aspect of truth that he made himself like a gesher, like a bridge. He said, Remez sha'emes hu ha-gesher kanal. It hints to the fact that the truth is a bridge. It's that which gets a person through the bridge of constriction of this world. Think about a bridge. It's a narrow place that a person needs to pass from one side to the other. In order to get from one side to the other, you need to pass over, let's say, a river. So in order to pass over this river, this dangerous place, he needs a gesher, something to get him through that. And that, R Nosson is saying, is the concept of emes, the concept of truth. Ki Yaakov asa atzma ki gesher, lahatzil es kol asher lo mipachar halayla. Jacob made himself like a bridge in order to save all of his things, and in order to save it from this fear of night, meaning the fear of the forces of evil. And from the fear of Esau, who was coming out to greet him. This is a general analogy to the concept of any challenges and fears, difficulties, those things that prevent him from serving Hashem. The person has from those who hate him, those who wish to prevent him, within which the evil inclination encloses himself. Esav kayadua. The Yetzer Hara is the aspect of Esav, as is known. Yaakov siman lebanov. And therefore Jacob gave a sign for his children. That the only way to get through all of this is through the attribute of truth. Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, is the aspect, the attribute of truth. So a person needs to focus on what's really true, what's really real. Which is the aspect of Jacob, who is emes, Yaakov ish emes, and he made himself like a bridge. That with this power, so a person has the ability to get through this world all of his life, pass through this very narrow bridge. A person can get through that without too much fear, like we said. So it comes out that there are two concepts here that R Nosson is saying that we learn here from Yaakov, from Jacob. The first is the aspect of giving oneself space, of finding expansion within the challenge. So one of the ways that he says to do that is by looking for the good, looking at the good that a person has, noticing that in the past Hashem has done so much good for me, noticing that even within this challenge there are still aspects of expansion. Hashem is still showing himself to me, even though it seems like Hashem is not here, but I can see that Hashem is really here as well. That's the first idea. And the second idea is emes, that when a person wants to get through this world, he wants to get through the challenges, those things that want to prevent him from succeeding in the world, from succeeding in his avodas Hashem, from succeeding in his spiritual quest. So the way to do that is by accessing truth, being honest. What's it all really about? What's life really about? What do I really want? What does my heart really say? Focusing in on the truth. Hashem should bless you and Hashem should bless me. Hashem should help us to be able to use these tools, be able to recognize the good, to see it in the past, to see it in the present, to see it no matter what our situation is. Hashem should help us to be able to access truth, to be really real with ourselves, and to be able to use this tool to be able to pass through the gesher, the very narrow bridge which is this world. Hashem should help us to be able to get to the other side successfully, to find our spiritual path, and to be able to succeed in our relationship with Hashem. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos. This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.